It was something that brought together the best of everything that they'd accumulated and created it in one place. It's a memorial to a lost time.
The depths below Kara, Hora. When Artur Jemukov first returned from the shaft, he refused to speak for weeks. His notebooks, usually filled with sketches and geological notes, were almost empty this time, only a few diagrams and the words.
I think that what we're looking at in that whole area is the outcome of contact with an earlier, largely lost civilization.
Stone alignment irregular, impossible angles, lights moved. It was this cryptic silence that drew the attention of Moscow's Geological Institute, who quietly funded a second expedition in late 2012. What followed would turn the Kara, Hora shaft from a curious geological puzzle into one of the most unsettling enigmas ever recorded in subterranean exploration. The second descent was documented with precision. Jemukov brought a team of 6 climbers, 1 geologist, 1 engineer, and 2 camera specialists. Their mission was to map the entire shaft with laser equipment and to determine if the geometry of the walls could somehow be a natural phenomenon, perhaps a rare example of basalt column fracturing or tectonic cleavage. But the moment they lowered the new scanning devices into the abyss, the instruments began malfunctioning. The lasers, designed to map surfaces in millimeter detail, returned fragmented data. Walls that seemed to bend and shift mid-measurement, surfaces that duplicated themselves at impossible depths. At first, they blamed interference from mineral content or humidity. But when they checked their calibration against control surfaces outside the shaft, the instruments worked flawlessly. Inside, however, the space refused to behave as physical geometry should. Jemukov wrote in his second field report, "It's as if the walls exist slightly out of phase with one another. When light hits them, the reflections don't align. The further we descend, the more the air feels charged, almost magnetized." The team managed to reach the chamber again, this time bringing specialized cameras and seismographs. The temperature there was steady, 10 degrees Celsius, yet the readings showed fluctuations that did not correspond with environmental change. Something was radiating energy from within the stone itself. When the lights illuminated the chamber's base, they found something Jemukov had never seen before. Along the bottom edge of the east wall were 4 rectangular cavities, evenly spaced, each about 6 feet high and 4 feet wide, resembling doorways, but filled with the same seamless stone. They were recessed so perfectly that they looked like entrances sealed from the inside. The geologist, Dr. Sergei Malinov, hypothesized that the cavities might once have been connected to side tunnels, later closed by collapse or sediment. But his tone was uncertain. The seal lines were far too clean. No fracture, no debris, no mineral intrusion. It was as if the doors had been melted shut in a single instant. When Jemukov touched the stone, his gloves picked up a faint static vibration. The readings from their electromagnetic scanner spiked sharply at each door. The engineer, nervous, switched off the equipment and muttered that the signals looked artificial, like the residual hum of power lines. Yet there was nothing metallic nearby. They stayed below for 2 hours before the climbing technician began feeling dizzy and disoriented. The air wasn't toxic. Oxygen levels were normal. But several team members later reported an odd sense of pressure behind the eyes, as though the space itself was pressing inward. They ascended before finishing the mapping, deciding to continue after rest. 2 days later, they descended again. Only this time, the shaft seemed slightly different. The top opening appeared unchanged, yet the laser altimeter registered an additional 5 meters of depth. It made no sense. The surface rock above hadn't shifted. The idea that the shaft had grown overnight was dismissed as a data glitch, until the team physically confirmed it by rope measurements. The shaft was, indeed, deeper than before. Something in its geometry was changing. This was the point where local authorities stepped in. Word of the anomaly reached the Regional Ministry of Emergency Situations, and soon the expedition was halted under the guise of safety concerns. Officially, The shaft was labeled unstable terrain and cordoned off with warning signs. Unofficially, Jemukov received a letter stamped by the Ministry of Defense demanding the handover of all records, footage, and rock samples. He complied, but not entirely. Before surrendering the data, he made duplicates, which he later smuggled to his colleague, Natalia Kravchenko, a geophysicist based in Sochi. Kravchenko was among the few scientists brave enough to discuss the shaft openly. In a 2014 symposium at the Russian Academy of Sciences, she presented a paper under a false site name, referring to it as Site 19K. She proposed that the vertical structure might be the product of directed tectonic displacement, an unknown geological mechanism by which layers of rock could be forced into alignment through magnetic or gravitational influence. But privately, she told reporters something else entirely. If this was a natural formation, she said, then nature has learned to use architecture. Around that same year, rumors began spreading across online Russian forums frequented by military historians. One post claimed that the German Ahnenerbe organization, the Nazi occult research branch, had documented a gateway structure in the Caucasus during 1943. The supposed files recovered from a burned archive in Berlin included coordinates that nearly matched the Kara-Hora region. The documents, if real, mentioned shaft of the 12 stones, said to be connected to energetic vortices, and an experiment known only as Project Schwarz-Tief, Black Depth Project. Of course, there was no official record of such a project. Historians dismissed it as conspiracy. Yet the match in description, vertical shaft, smooth walls, enormous blocks, was too close to ignore. Some suggested that German engineers might have stumbled upon the site during the Caucasus campaign and documented it, mistaking its natural perfection for the work of an ancient civilization. Others speculated something darker, that the Nazis had used the site for their own experiments in geomagnetic or resonance technology. In 2016, Kravchenko returned to the site under a civilian research permit, disguised as part of an environmental survey. What she found confirmed her worst fears. The entrance had been reinforced with steel barriers and guarded by men who refused to identify themselves. Her team was denied entry, but allowed to take atmospheric readings around the perimeter. The results were staggering: magnetic fluctuations 3 times above the regional norm, pulsing at regular intervals of 0.6 Hz. That frequency, she later noted, corresponds to the Schumann resonance, the natural electromagnetic vibration of the Earth's atmosphere. If the shaft was pulsing at that frequency, it meant it wasn't just an empty space. It was resonating with the planet itself. A year later, Kravchenko disappeared. Officially, she died in a climbing accident near Dombey, but colleagues who reviewed her final notes claimed her GPS coordinates placed her only 20 kilometers from the Kara-Hora site. Her computer hard drives were seized by authorities. Her apartment was cleared within 48 hours. The mystery might have ended there, sealed behind bureaucratic silence, if not for a leak in 2019. A series of images appeared on a deep web forum known for hosting restricted archaeological data. The photos showed what appeared to be a massive underground hall with polygonal stone walls illuminated by industrial floodlights. In the background, a red hazard sign read, in Cyrillic, magnetometric hazard zone, keep distance. Experts who examined the images noted familiar details: the smooth walls, the colossal block structures, and, most disturbing of all, symbols faintly carved into one of the pillars. The shapes were geometric, angular, not Cyrillic or Latin. They looked eerily similar to characters found in megalithic sites like Göbekli Tepe or Baalbek, repeating triangles and intersecting spirals. No one could authenticate the photos. The forum moderators removed them within hours, but not before screenshots spread across multiple research networks. Jemukov, now retired and living in Nalchik, refused all interviews but reportedly told a friend, "It's not man-made. It's not even ancient. It's older than stone." That comment reignited scientific and public curiosity alike. If the shaft predated the mountain range itself, it meant it was constructed, if that word even applies, before the Caucasus rose from the Tethys Sea over 25 million years ago. No human, no civilization could have existed to build it then. And yet something did. By 2020, a classified division of Rosageology, Russia's geological agency, began conducting electromagnetic tomography of the region using satellite interferometry. Though officially focused on mineral exploration, leaked telemetry showed a vast hollow zone beneath the Kara-Hora region, an elongated cavity running eastward for over 2 kilometers. The formation's outline matched no known lava tube or karst system. Its structure appeared engineered. From this moment on, the mystery grew beyond borders. International researchers from France, Japan, and the United States began referencing anomalous geostructures in unpublished reports. One declassified U.S. Geological Survey document, obtained through FOIA, described the site as an unexplained subsurface anomaly demonstrating rhythmic electromagnetic emission and geometry inconsistent with natural deposition. Unofficially, it was labeled the Vertical Gate. By 2023, no public expeditions were allowed anywhere near the mountain. Locals reported hearing low-frequency hums at night, vibrating through the ground like a distant engine. Some claimed their compasses spun freely within a 10-kilometer radius of the site. Livestock refused to graze near the foothills. In early 2024, a leaked satellite thermal map revealed periodic temperature fluctuations. Heat blooming from beneath the ground, rising and fading at intervals synchronized with seismic tremors thousands of miles away. The Earth itself seemed to be speaking through the shaft. What lay beneath remained hidden, but the growing evidence pointed toward a single conclusion, that the Kara-Hora shaft was not merely a hole in the Earth, but a mechanism, one possibly still functioning. Its purpose, however, remained beyond comprehension, and those who dared to look deeper were about to find that the mountain's silence wasn't natural at all. It was waiting. The descent beyond light in early 2025, the Kara-Hora region was closed off entirely. Satellite imagery showed no public roads leading in or out, and military trucks were occasionally spotted driving at night toward the mountain's base, their lights off, their plates covered. The Russian government cited geotechnical instability as the reason for the blockade, but the timing raised questions. At the same time, global seismographs recorded strange pulses, micro-tremors rising in sequence from the Caucasus, each precisely 22 minutes apart, extending for 4 straight days. These weren't earthquakes. The signals were rhythmic, coordinated, like the beat of something alive buried deep beneath the crust. And then the pulses stopped. For 3 months, silence, until a series of leaks began emerging from a private geological contractor allegedly hired to assist in subsurface mapping of the site. One of those contractors, a man later identified as D. Mironov, contacted a Moscow-based journalist known for reporting on defense-related environmental secrets. The messages he sent were heavily encrypted, and one of them contained a phrase that stunned investigators. The shaft goes deeper than the scanners can trace. We reach the floor, but it's not the bottom. There's a cavity below, perfectly smooth, and something moves inside. Mironov disappeared 2 weeks later. His ID was later found at the Terek River crossing, but no trace of his body was ever recovered. The unofficial team. It was around this time that a multinational team of independent researchers, calling themselves the Meridian Group, began assembling evidence from leaked telemetry, seismic data, and underground imaging. Their findings indicated that the Kara-Hora shaft was not a vertical tunnel at all, but the visible edge of a much larger structure embedded within the mountain. From magnetic tomography, they modeled what appeared to be a cylindrical construct, at least a kilometer wide, extending downward and curving into the Earth's mantle. The material, Whatever it was, reflected electromagnetic signals like polished metal but produced no resonance signature typical of iron or steel. It behaved as though it were absorbing sound and energy. One of the members, geophysicist Dr. Henry Claudette, described the readings as a negative echo, an absence, a silence that consumed every wave sent toward it. When you send energy into it, he said, the energy doesn't come back. It vanishes as if eaten by space itself. That line would later appear in his obituary. Claudette's body was found in his Geneva apartment in late March 2025, his computers wiped clean, every external drive missing. The third descent, despite official restrictions, an unregistered expedition somehow entered the region that same month. Locals later recalled seeing a helicopter flying low across the valley just before dawn, carrying equipment strapped to its undercarriage. According to surviving notes later published anonymously, this team, led by one of Jemukov's former assistants, intended to descend into the shaft one final time before it was sealed forever. They brought new tools, advanced magnetometers, air composition analyzers, and a fiber optic camera capable of transmitting footage in total darkness. What they captured has never been released publicly, but fragments of the report were later leaked through encrypted research forums. According to the partial transcript, the first 300 meters were normal. The same smooth, cold walls, the same faint static hum that instruments registered as an ambient electromagnetic field. But at 320 meters, the readings changed dramatically. The air pressure dropped by 7% and the magnetometer spiked off scale. A tone, so low it was almost inaudible, vibrated through the descent cables. The climbers reported feeling their bones resonate. Then came the first visual anomaly. At around 340 meters, the fiber optic camera captured what appeared to be reflections from below, soft glimmers of light moving like liquid silver. At first, the team assumed they were seeing their own lamps bouncing off moisture or mineral veins. But the reflections moved independently, swaying against the rope's motion, responding to sound. When one of the team members called down to test echo delay, the light patterns shifted in sync with his voice, pulsing to each syllable like sound waves made visible. "It's listening," someone whispered on the recording. At 380 meters, the team reached what they thought was the bottom chamber, the same one Jemukov had documented. But instead of a solid floor, they found a depression, a concave disc roughly 20 meters wide, carved with concentric grooves spiraling toward the center. The grooves emitted faint luminescence, like phosphorescent stone. Their radiation detectors picked up no measurable energy, yet the light persisted, softly rippling, as if alive. They lowered a probe into the grooves. The moment it touched the central point, every piece of electronic equipment within 20 meters shut off simultaneously. The cameras went black. Audio logs from that exact second recorded something else, a deep, sustained hum that gradually rose in pitch until it became a blinding shriek. And then, silence. 2 minutes of silence. Then one voice, trembling, "It's open. The floor is gone." The descent rope, still attached to the camera probe, began unwinding at incredible speed, descending into what appeared to be empty space. The probe's cable stretched past its 500-meter limit before snapping clean. One climber reported that the chamber folded, that the walls appeared to twist like reflections on water. A magnetic surge swept through the air, and one of their wrist compasses spun continuously even after they exited the shaft. By the time they ascended, half their equipment was fried. The only footage that survived shows a blurred shape, a vast circular void darker than anything visible by light. Some researchers later compared it to the inside of an event horizon. The Meridian Group analyzed these partial data sets and proposed a stunning hypothesis that the Hora structure was not geological at all, but an artificial resonant cavity designed to channel electromagnetic energy deep into the earth. One physicist from the group described it as an inverted antenna broadcasting inward. The purpose of such a device, if that's what it was remains a terrifying question. If the shaft truly extended into the mantle, it could interact with the planet's geomagnetic field in ways humanity has never understood. The rhythmic pulses detected earlier might have been activation cycles, periodic calibrations between the structure and the Earth's natural resonance. When asked what might trigger such a system, the group's mathematician, Dr. Sato, replied, "If it's receiving, it's waiting for a signal. If it's transmitting, then it's been calling out for a very, very long time." Her statement was later removed from the official publication draft. Echoes from the past. In late 2025, a researcher in Germany uncovered a fragment of a declassified Nazi transcript dated 1944, referencing Caucasus anomalies, deep resonance caverns. The memo, written by an officer attached to the Ahnenerbe, stated, "Below Mount Kora, Hora lies a harmonic structure not of terrestrial origin. Our instruments detect vibrational echoes in perfect symmetry to planetary frequency. Proceeding further is forbidden by the Black Directive." The phrase, "not of terrestrial origin," reignited speculation that the structure might have been either constructed or placed by an intelligence predating humanity. Meanwhile, modern sensors continued to detect anomalies in the region. Deep penetration radar imagery from European satellites revealed geometric voids too perfect to be natural. Rectilinear corridors, arches, massive chambers aligned to magnetic north. If these formations were ancient, then they were older than civilization itself, and if they were not, then someone, or something, had built them beneath the mountain with knowledge of the planet's innermost frequencies. The unexplained phenomena. Locals began reporting disturbing effects. Animals avoiding certain valleys, night skies flickering faintly blue for seconds at a time, people waking in the night with sudden nosebleeds, hearing a tone like a metallic hum vibrating through their bones. A journalist from Tbilisi attempted to record these sounds using low-frequency microphones. The resulting waveform revealed a repeating pattern of pulses spaced exactly 22 minutes apart, the same rhythm as the seismic signals from months earlier. When analyzed through software, the waveform contained harmonic patterns identical to human speech frequencies, yet no words, just structured resonance, like coded modulation. The journalist later remarked, "It was like hearing language without meaning, as if something beneath was trying to speak through the earth itself." The revelation at 600 meters. One final expedition, conducted covertly in August 2025, reached a depth no team had managed before. Using a new kind of composite cable and drone probe, they descended past the spiral chamber into the void below. The footage begins with the drone light flickering through heavy particulate air. The walls, if that's what they were, appeared to ripple like fluid stone. The drone's depth sensor glitched, showing alternating readings, 600 meters, 60-10, then infinite. Then, suddenly, the image stabilized. Before the camera, at the center of the darkness, floated an enormous structure, perfectly spherical, hovering silently above what looked like molten stone. Its surface was covered in thousands of hexagonal plates, each shifting subtly, as if breathing, and in the center of the sphere, faintly glowing through layers of dust, was a circular opening, not carved, not formed, just present. The drone approached slowly. A pulse of light emitted from the opening, so bright it washed out the entire feed for 0.4 seconds. When the image returned, every electronic clock on board had reset to 0. The mission control team terminated the connection and evacuated the site. No one has since been allowed near Kara Hora, but those who have studied the remaining footage describe it the same way. Whatever lies beneath that mountain is not asleep. It is listening, and it remembers who built it. The signal beneath the world. By late 2025, the Kara Hora site was sealed permanently. Official reports cited risk of collapse due to seismic activity. Yet leaked correspondence between Russian Defense Engineering Division 14 and the Ministry of Emergency Situations told a different story. It mentioned containment instability and nonlinear field resonance within sub-chamber strata. Translated from bureaucratic language, that meant the mountain itself was vibrating, not from tectonic movement, but from something deep below, something synchronized to a repeating pattern. Every 22 minutes, the pulse returned. At first it was faint, like a heartbeat under miles of rock, but as weeks passed, the intervals shortened. 20 minutes, then 19. The amplitude doubled, then tripled. Underground sensors in Georgia, Azerbaijan, and southern Russia all picked it up. The pattern was the same everywhere, as though the mountain's signal was spreading through the mantle, traveling across continents. Researchers from the European Seismological Agency plotted the data and realized the signal wasn't just repeating, it was evolving. The frequency wasn't constant, it was shifting upward by micro increments each day, climbing toward a resonance that no natural geological process could explain. It's tuning itself, one scientist said during a closed conference. To what? Another asked. To us, the language of the deep. When the pulses were converted into audio, they resembled the low mechanical hum of an enormous turbine. But when those same frequencies were visualized on a spectrograph, something extraordinary appeared: geometric patterns, fractal, like symmetrical, structures that repeated at harmonic intervals. Computer analysis suggested these were not random oscillations. They carried data. Encoded within the pulse structure was a repeating lattice of mathematical ratios consistent with prime number sequences. In other words, the signal contained intelligence. A decoding program developed by a joint Russian-French research team extracted partial shapes from the resonance field. Perfect concentric circles, triangles, and grids that mirrored the dimensions of the shaft itself. Each transmission seemed to map its own geometry, as though the structure was broadcasting a self-portrait. But there was another layer. When researchers slowed the audio by a factor of 1,000, they discovered micro-fluctuations within the hum, modulations that formed patterns eerily similar to human phonemes. Linguists who analyzed it found phonetic echoes corresponding to ancient Caucasian languages, some of which had been extinct for over 2,000 years. It was as if the mountain was speaking back in the tongue of its oldest inhabitants. The forbidden files. In December 2025, a cache of classified Soviet-era microfilms surfaced in a decommissioned bunker near Nalchik. They were labeled Project ZVZDNY-CANLY, Star Channels. The documents dated back to 1957 and described deep seismic experiments conducted during the early nuclear test years. Among them was a report detailing a series of controlled detonations beneath the Caucasus Mountains, designed to study underground propagation of shockwaves. One test conducted near the Kara-Hora region had triggered an unexplained feedback oscillation that persisted for over 72 hours. The lead scientist, Professor Yuri Sadov, wrote, "The harmonic echoes are unlike any seismic resonance. The Earth responds as if something beneath is mirroring our vibration. It is not reflection, it is repetition." A handwritten note in the margin read, "Woke it." Seto vanished the following year.